Hi, I'm Jared with LearnSpeed, and I'm here with Paul. Say hi, Paul.
Hey everyone, how are you?
So we are here looking at LearnSpeed from a tutor's perspective so you understand how to manage your tutoring. All right, so when you log in, you're going to have a home tab that you're going to come to. We're going to go through all of these tabs, but the first thing I'm going to do is take you to the upper right-hand corner, which says My Account. My Account is where you can go to, click on My Account, and this is where you can edit some of your information, like your contact information, reset your password. Um, all right, so let's go back to the Home tab. And we're going to look at some of the things that you can do under this Home tab. Now, one is that you might see when you log in, there might be some alert here at the top. Now, sometimes these are alerts that are from LearnSpeed, and other times they might be from EduPrime. If you see this, and after you've read it, if there's a little X in the upper right-hand corner, you can click that to make it disappear. Sometimes EduPrime might pop something up there that they don't want you to remove. If that's the case, then it won't have that X. So I'm going to go ahead and get rid of that one. And then we have these widgets on the home page. If you click on this little icon to the left, it'll expand those widgets. We're going to talk about what each one of these widgets do. And the next thing I want to look at is the People tab. So the People tab, you're going to see the students that are assigned to you. So in this case, this instructor, Charles, only has one student that's assigned to them. We're going to talk about how you can find more information about that student. The first thing that's going to happen, though, in this workflow is that an administrator like Paul will get information that there's a new student that needs help, and they're going to create a task for you when they connect that student to you as the tutor. So when you get a task, you will receive an email, and it'll also show up on your home page under the My Tasks widget. When you receive this task, you'll have some information about who the task was from and who the student is. If you put your cursor on this information icon, you can see the information about this task. Now, if this task is longer and it's dropping below the screen, you'll notice that anytime you roll off of that information icon, it disappears. So if you need it to stay there when you roll off of that, just click to pin, and then it stays up and you can scroll down to get more information, close that when you're done. All right, so it says here that we have a new student. Please review the work order and confirm when you've scheduled your first session. All right, so I got this as an email. I've logged in as the tutor, and now I'm going to click on the student's name. And let's go to the student's account here. And underneath the student's account, we see sessions, calendar, task, work order, vision, session credits, and comm log. The first thing we're going to look at is work orders. So when we go to work orders, we'll see that we've got a work order for Algebra 1. And to find out the information in this work order, we want to scroll over this information icon. Again, we can click to pin if we need to, so we can scroll around, and we can read the information. Now, Paul, I think it's probably pretty important that the instructors know what it is that they're doing with their students before they begin working, is correct?
Yeah, that's very true. That's very true. Because what we also want to be sure of is that by the time students are coming out of a tutoring session, students have actually benefited from an hour or two of our interaction.
Great. So one of the things to make sure that the student's benefiting is being really clear about what are the concerns. Why are they coming for tutoring? What's the history behind the issues that the students have, particularly with that subject? What are the objectives? What are we trying to accomplish in the tutoring? And then also, what are the scheduling issues? So this student is needing some help with algebra. We've got some information about what they need help with, and they're looking for 2 hours a week, Tuesdays and Thursdays after 2 p.m. So when Paul or one of the other administrators assigned this to this particular student, they assigned it to the student because they know that this instructor was available on Tuesdays and Thursdays. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at the calendar as the next step here, because one of your responsibilities is going to be to set your availability so the administrators know when you're available. Down here on the left-hand side, we see a lot of the viewing options for your calendar, and some of these you're going to want to leave on. One is available, so I'm going to check that box. Right now, there's no availability set up for this test instructor, so we'll do that in a minute. We'll show you how to set your availability. Locations, you can leave that on, and subjects is a good one. And then that's basically the ones that you want. You won't need event names because the student's name and the subject will automatically populate there. Quarter hours sometimes helps if to give you a little bit more room on the calendar, and then weekends, if you have availability on the weekends, we want to click that as well. All right, once you have those viewing options set up, you can use this little arrow here to hide all of that information so that you got a better view of your calendar. All right, so let's do the first thing. Let's set up your availability. Now, this instructor was available on Tuesdays and Thursdays, so let's say he's available at 10 a.m. And so I'm going to click on 10 o'clock on Tuesday, and I'm going to scroll down till we get to available. I'm going to check that box, and then I'm going to make this reoccurring for Tuesdays and Thursdays. And I have to, when it's reoccurring, I have to put in a number of reoccurring days or reoccurring tel. So oftentimes I know that my availability maybe is throughout the end of this school year of June. So I'll put June 30th. And you can edit your availability. We'll show you how to do that in a moment. So we can set that there. And then also, I'm not just available from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. as this test instructor. Let's say I'm available until 6. I could click on the end time and put 6 o'clock as the end time, or I know that that is 8 hours away from that, so I can put an 8 here, so 10 to 6. All right, so that sets up my availability. I'll go ahead and hit save here. All right, so we've got our availability. It's this light shade of this color. By chance, if you want to change that color, you go over here to these 3 dots, and you can change the color to a different color if you'd like. Let's change it to this color. All right, now that we've got the availability set up, we'll see that this availability recurs each week. Now you might need to edit your availability. So if you need to edit your availability, you can do a couple things. Let's say that you're not available on Thursday the 3rd, that whole day. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and click on that availability, and I'm just going to delete this as a single. And by doing that, I'm just not available on that day. So Thursday the 3rd, I'm no longer available, but when we go back in, and I look at the future, it's still there as available. Now, let's say that in the future, I'm just no longer available on Tuesdays and Thursdays anymore. I'm available on Mondays and Wednesdays now. So I can click on this one on the 15th, and I'm going to delete future. That's going to get rid of all of that availability going forward. And now at that point, I can reset my availability to say for Mondays and Wednesdays. And it would be the same way, clicking on it, going down to availability, doing reoccurring the same way we did before. Now there's one more thing you can do with your availability to manage it. Let's say that you're available, but you've got a doctor's appointment. Okay, to show that I'm not available from 2 to 4 p.m., I'm just going to click here on this little white section of the 2 o'clock hour, and I'm just going to write in the event name out, and then for the subject, I'm going to write, pick scheduling, and then just make it from 2 o'clock till 4 o'clock, 2 hours, and that's it. I just have to hit save. And what that will do is it's going to put right on top of my calendar that I am out. Now it just says scheduling here so that they know that you're just not available. If the administrators view this with event names, they'll see that you're out as well. Okay. The next thing we're going to look at is how to schedule your students. So when you've got your availability set up, so sometimes what the administrators might do is, knowing your availability, they might schedule that first session, and if they do that, when they create the task, they're going to let you know that your first session was scheduled for a particular date, and then to reach out to the student to confirm, and then you would be responsible for scheduling from there. But sometimes it's true, Paul, that the instructors will be required to reach out to the student and do the initial scheduling as well?
Yes, correct. So sometimes you might need to reach out to our students because students are kind of busy, and we might need to schedule. But once we've done the first schedule, we create a relationship with students, and it's easier to do multiple schedules from there.
Okay, perfect. So what we're going to do is we're going to assume that you got this task that you need to schedule this student with you on your schedule, and we're going to do that now. So you've contacted the student, and they're available at Tuesdays and Thursdays. They need twice a week scheduled sessions, and it was after 2 o'clock. So you spoke to the student, and let's say that starting next week, one thing to note is that whenever you're on the current week, it's blue at the top. When you go to any week that's not current, it's orange at the top. It just kind of helps you to understand what your availability looks like. Now, let's say here we've got availability on Tuesdays, not this Thursday, but then going forward, we are available. So let's go ahead and schedule for Tuesdays and Thursdays starting on Tuesday the 1st, and I'm going to do this. Let's schedule them at 3 o'clock. I go to the 3 o'clock hour, click on this white spot here, and it's got my calendar. I'm going to pick the subject, which in this case is algebra that I'm working with the student on. And the session type you do not need to add. That's going to come later. And then down here, I'm going to add an attendee, and this is the student that you have. Now, you only have access to students that are assigned to you. If you're trying to schedule somebody and they're not showing up, you just need to contact the EduPrime administration, and they'll make sure to assign that student to you. Now, if it's an online session, now, Paul, are all the sessions online or some in person?
So we're expecting to have 80% sessions online.
Okay. All right. So if it's an online session, you'll click this vision checkbox. If it's not online, you could leave that unchecked. All right. So this is going to be an online session. So we're going to check that. We've got our attendee here. And I'm going to have this be reoccurring. And it's going to recur every week on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And if this is kind of indefinite schedule, we're going to schedule it through the end of the school year. All right. Now that we've got that scheduled, I'm going to hit save. So if there's anything that's missing, you might get a notification that there's something missing about that schedule and you have to fix that. Now here, we notice that this is scheduling us for Tuesdays and Thursdays going forward, and we can see that. And we see that the Thursday, the 3rd, I wasn't available, so I'm going to go ahead and delete that one by clicking on it and just deleting that single. All right, so we've got our schedule set up with this student. And we'll look at this calendar. We see we have R, that stands for reoccurring, and V is for vision. The instructor and also the student receive a reminder of the session several hours before the session takes place. And there's a couple other ways that you can keep on top of your schedule, and take a look at that now. So let's go to the side here. I'm going to look at this side view. All right, next to your name, these 3 dots, if we click on those 3 dots, we're going to see a couple things down here. One, public page URL. If we click on that, this is going to give us an EduPrime schedule. So you can see all of the sessions that I have scheduled in the future with this, with all my students. This will have everybody that's on your schedule. And if it's a vision session, you'll see a join button next to the date. So you would just click join to join the session. This is a page that you can bookmark, and as long as you refresh it, it will have your updated schedule. All right, so that's one way you can join your session and also know what your schedule looks like. Another way is by getting your reminders, and if I edit again by clicking on these 3 dots and click edit here, this says I get an auto reminder at 2 hours before the session takes place. So you'll get that reminder as well. And then the next way that you can join a session is by going to your calendar and clicking on the event. When we do that, we see it says Join Vision at the top, and that allows you to join that online session at that point. So the links are only good for each event, and you can only log in 5 minutes before the session. So the other thing that can happen is your student might not get their link. So maybe they reach out to you and they say, hey, I can't find my link. If you click this Send Join Links, it will send the link to anybody else that's an attendee in the session as well. Your student should have access to their bookmark calendars as well. And if they don't have that, I can look up my student and go to the right-hand side here, these 3 dots. Let's go ahead and move your image here so we can see this. This email calendar will email them that link as well. So that's a way that they can get that link if they've lost it. All right. Paul, I think the next thing we want to look at is how they create their session log. So the session log is important for a number of reasons. One, it drives the billing, it drives your payroll, but it also is the reporting about what's happening during the sessions. So in order to complete your session log, you need to be logged in. You go to that calendar event, and then what you're going to do is scroll down, and here where it says session type, you make sure that you've got the right session type. Now, for most of your students that you're working with, there's going to be one specific session type that's associated with that student, so you can't make a mistake. In this case, it's high school tutoring. So we make sure that we got that picked, and then click Add Draft Session. Now, this is a future session just because we're doing a demo. That's okay. Yours will be at the time that you're having a session. All right, so when you're logging your session, you're going to complete the fields. Attendance, pretty straightforward. You're going to choose the appropriate attendance, in this case, attended. The location, this is an online session. Other options are in-home, school, or tutoring center, online. Progress, on track is the default, and you want to choose needs improvement if there's any deviation from the expected performance. If the student's not on track to meeting their goals, you want to put needs improvement, and you probably also, if it needs improvement, put requires attention. And then when you create your session log, something specific about what the issue is, and you might include that in the admin note, which is for internal use only. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. And then finally, homework assigned, yes or C note or no. All right. Now, when you're completing your session report, we're going to go ahead and click on Edit Student Note, and I'm going to use this little icon here to scroll this down a bit. So you have instructions here in the template that will show up anytime you're writing your session log, and you'll see that it gives you some instructions to provide a link to the student to complete the student feedback form. So that link, you're just going to copy it and you're going to paste it in the shared notes field or in chat in Vision, or if you're meeting with them in person. Paul, if they're meeting in person, how do you get them the link? Do you just text it to them, or?
Yeah, they should receive it in their email. I mean, however, even if you're meeting in person, the students will have to close the session out. So while closing the session out, the procedure is still the same.
Okay, got it. All right. So bottom line is, however you get it done, you need to get this link to the student so that they can complete their feedback form at the end of the session. All right. So once you've given that link to the student, you can get rid of that link. You want to get rid of all those instructions because those instructions are going to go to the student. So what you also have here in your session note template, session summary, problem areas, progress, and next appointment. So this is where you want to capture information about the session. So you're generally going to be doing this during the session. Is that right, Paul? You want them to be completing these session logs during the session? Yeah. All right. Yeah. The benefit of doing it during the session is you don't have it hanging over your head at the end of your sessions, or if you have 3 or 4 sessions in a row at the end of the night trying to catch up with everything. If you do this during the session, then it's just over. But there's another benefit. If you do it during the session, then you have a chance to review with the student what's happened. So from a pedagogical standpoint, actually reviewing the lesson, talking about the takeaways. So there could be some things like what it was that the student's doing that you want to reinforce. It could be something that you noticed from the session about a strategy or some type of thing that you did to overcome a challenge that the student had. The problem areas, this is kind of more about focusing on, well, what are the things that we're going to work on next? Like, what are the things that they're going to be wanting to look at in the future? Progress, if you want to put down something special that the student accomplished, and then their next appointment. So you're going to complete this session log, and we'll take a look at a sample session log in just a moment. Once you're done filling out that, you're to hit save. And once we've done that, you would be posting the session. Now, I did say earlier about the admin note. So an admin note is if you want to communicate something just for internal purposes. And the client note is if the student is a minor and they have a parent, this note would just go to the parent. Of course, administration can also see it, but it wouldn't be sent to the student. So there's some different purposes. Most of your session logs are just going to need a student note. Now, one thing I think is important to note, Paul, is that anytime anybody writes a note in the client note or the admin note, even though those are not getting sent to the student or the admin note's not sent to the student or the parent, anytime you write these notes, you should make an assumption that at some point in the future, the student or the parent might see this note. That is, it should be appropriate. You should never be embarrassed if the student or the parent saw this note. It's for internal purposes only, but you want to make sure that it's very respectful, whatever the language is, that if a student was looking over somebody in an administrator's shoulder and they saw their account, sometimes that note might pop up. So make sure that you're aware of that when you're completing those notes. All right, once you've done completing the session log, you're just going to post the session. And it changes from a draft mode to a posted mode. Now, you can see your sessions by going to My Sessions, and you can see the sessions that have taken place that you've posted. You can see the ones that required attention, and you can also go back and see the content from an earlier session that you had. So if I'm going to go ahead and show that if I have my cursor on this, and I want to scroll down to see the other information, if I scroll off, it's gone, so I'm going to click to pin, and now I can scroll. So this is an example of a session log. You know, we looked at how writing down each step in the problem really helps you to not make mistakes, and how substituting real numbers in place of variables helps you to see what operation to use. So this is the information that's going to be sent home to the student and to the parent if it's a student and not a non-adult student. When you create your session logs, automatically your timesheets are created for you. And you can view any of those timesheets and you can see the related information there as well. Once these have been approved by the administration, the timesheets get automatically approved, and you'll be able to see these timesheet entries as it compares to your pay. So under the Reports tab, you see different reports for your approved timesheets, and then you can also see your daily sessions. And so you can click on these and you can see information about the past sessions and the notes. And some of these you can export as CSVs or you can just view them. So you've got a number of different reports you can use here. The other thing that I want to cover is back at the beginning of the process, we talked about your tasks. And when you receive this task from the administrator and you've scheduled your first sessions, you want to make sure that you come back to My Tasks and complete the task. So you would just come in, receive the task, you would put the notes in here that you received the task and you've contacted the student and got them scheduled, and then you would save this. When you do that, what happens is the administrator who created that task receives a notification that this has been completed. And most importantly, if you don't get that task done by the due date, both you and the administrator receive a past due notification. That's going to make sure that we don't drop the ball for students. So this is the training for LearnSpeed. You'll have a second video that will cover the Vision Online lesson space. And you'll also have an opportunity to go to a Vision room where you can test it before you work with your first students. If you have any questions about anything, of course, contact Paul or other administrators at EduPrime. And if there's any issues that you have with LearnSpeed, if there's some type of bug or something that you don't think is working correctly, you can always go to support, and that will pull up the email support@learnspeed.com so that you can communicate your issues. That's it for me. Anything else from you, Paul?
Looks good to me.
All right, sounds good. Happy tutoring, guys.